All right, glad to have you back. Now, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association has backed the Business Advocacy and Partnership Award from the Presidential Enabling Business Environment, Council PEBEC. The award was presented to NECA during PEBEC's yearly award and gala night held in the banquet hall, Aso Villa in Abuja, in recognition of its steadfast commitment, constructive engagement, and strategic collaboration, which has strengthened Nigerian business environment and supported government's reform agenda. Speaking shortly after receiving the award, Director General of NECA, Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde, expressed deep appreciation to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's led administration for the recognition, as well as PEBEC's continued efforts to improve the business climate for all Nigerians. Mr. Oyerinde described the award as a testament to the association's long-standing commitment to supporting enterprises, advancing regulatory improvements, and promoting a more predictable and growth-enabling economic landscape. Let's talk more about this development and, of course, the role of the private sector in the realignment of Nigeria's economy. And my guest is no other person than the Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Adewale Smart Oyerinde. DG, congratulations. And let me get a handshake for that. Well, that's a good one. PEBEC recognizing your efforts. How does it come to you, and is it spurring you to do more?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's an unusual award because the general perception is that organizations like us that are advocating for improved business environments, sometimes people think we are just unnecessarily antagonistic of government policies. But it came as a surprise that a first-class rated presidential committee could see through the work we do and appreciate our role in influencing a proper environment for organized businesses to thrive in this country. Because really, the story of any country, any nation, or any community cannot be complete without mentioning the private sector. So for us, we appreciate the PEBEC leadership. We appreciate the Vice President who presented the award, and the Governor of Plateau State was also there, and also congratulate others that won such awards. And Lagos State also got an award for its reform efforts, basically, as it were. So for us, it's a reward for good work and more work in 2026.
More work, I must say, particularly with regards to our economy. Our economy seems to be bouncing back. Everyone is talking about the positive outlook, considering the indicators and figures that we see. Just yesterday, my earlier conversation was around inflation. 14.45% is where we are at the moment. Even government's prediction was about 15% to end 2025. But now we are at about 14.45%. Let me ask you how that comes to you and what you think with regards to the state of our economy at this time.
You know, there's been various interpretations of the figure, and as it were, you can never have a total alignment. Even when the economy is booming, you can't have a total alignment as per this is actually what is happening. But significantly, or to a large extent, we seem to be on the right path economically. We seem to be doing some things right, maybe they are not happening at the pace at which we want it, but you can perceive that, look, things are a bit moving in the right direction, stability in the macroeconomy, the monetary policy is also seems to be settling down gradually. The forex reserves is also building up gradually. So you can, the governors are earning that from fact they're collecting over 100% of what they used to collect.
1.9 trillion yesterday.
So there seems to be some element of that we're heading in the right direction. But having said that, I think there is also need, where it disconnects, or where most people are feeling the disconnect, is between those figures and the realities, that the average Nigerian on the street, the average worker in the shop floor, I think that we need to find a way to make those positives at the macro level actually become positives, real life experience for average Nigerians. And hopefully 2026 will usher us into that realm where the average Nigerians can actually feel the impact of all these things that we are doing. At the macro level, good stability, positive for businesses also because we seem to have a government or some agencies that are responsive now. When policies are not working at the way we think it should work, you escalate those concerns,
able to act very
and
swiftly.
they act swiftly to address your concerns. I think those are positives that we've not experienced in time past, but more can be done to drive this economy out of the woods finally. The analogy we usually give here is when you find yourself in the hole, the first thing you stop doing is you stop digging. So I think probably we have stopped digging, probably we are getting to the ground zero, which is a kudos to this administration, but we have to now be deliberate about growth, not only growth, inclusive growth, as it were.
Now, let's stay with that inclusive growth, which you just matter with this very important, which you just raised. And the issue now to me is like what many talk about. We seem to be getting the micro right. What happens to the macro? And that is something that everyone is worried about. The man on the street wants food on his table. He wants yam cheap, rice cheap, and all of that. So when you talk about 2026, there's some things we need to do. What are those things we can do? Particularly, I think we need to create more jobs. We need to improve productivity. What are these things we need to start to do urgently?
For the micro, there are three things. We call them wage goods. That once you get it right at that micro level, then the pressure reduces significantly. Part of it is shelter, transportation, and food. Once you take those three, and it just align with Maslow's law, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once you take care of transportation issues, accommodation issues, and food issues, those are where the pressure comes, and those are the areas where we have serious challenge now. The security issue. Yeah, there's some focus, and the president has declared emergency in security architecture. So once we deal with security, it also affects the context of food, because the farmers that we have are not, they can't go to farm. Those that are planting cannot harvest, which affects the whole value chain of food production. So once we can deal with these insecurity issues, which is a big issue because it affects all the strata of our economic development, and then we can deal with the transportation. There was the issue of the CNG buses. I think we need to do more to reduce the pressure on the average Nigerians within the context of those three issues. We know sometime this year the Lagos State government came up with the rent law in Lagos State, because also the way and manner in which landlords are, I suppose you are one. The way landlords are increasing rents, in this, especially in Lagos, is quite alarming. So we need to create structures, systematic structures, to reduce this pressure on the general masses. Then support for the private sector so that it can fulfill its role as the real engine of economic development.
But some would argue with you and say, based on the economic realities on ground, that is why they have to do some of this increments and all of that. For example, someone will tell you if a liter of fuel, as a few months ago, sold at a particular amount, and today it sells at, in some cases, about 900, in some cases. So someone would tell you that a bag of cement used to be this price, but now it sells for this price. So some will tell you they have very solid arguments and say, well, yeah, while I agree that we need to also be considerate, but I still think that some of the landlords will want to justify this move, considering the reality on ground.
It's really about being sensitive to. I think we find ourselves in the situation where, when you are hot, rather than find a way to deal with the cause of your of the pain, you look for the next person to pass the pain to. So, when the landlords say, and rightly so, those arguments for landlords are valid. We also have the conversation going on in the media about the FS, that the FS are also
FS too.
Those arguments are valid in the reality of the situation, but you find some arbitrariness going on within the context of those
increases.
Unacceptable. Yes. So those and somebody said in Nigeria, when things go up, they hardly come down. Except now in the context of the fuel price, when they remove when subsidy was removed, was hovering around 1,000 plus. As of today, Dangote has dropped the price of fuel to between 600 and something to 700 and something.
Yeah, it sells for 739, 740 at some MRS stations.
So once we determine that we remove the tendency to exploit others from the context of what we do, and for organized businesses, I think we have progressively moved from the issue of profit maximization to profit optimization. So it's not really about hurting Nigerians, but the business also have to survive. So the government have a major role to play within the context of all these things. Why we are not advocating for price controls, but there must be some level of regulation so that Shylock individuals, people that don't care about what happens on the long run, so that they don't take advantage of the liberalization or the market economy that we currently run. Others have done it in some other states, in some other countries, and I think we can also do it, especially when we all decide to be very good and patriotic Nigerians.
There's a lot of talk around our industrial policy and all of that, and I know that NECA is very active in this meeting with the Minister of Industry, I think State for Industry. Yep. He's been meeting with MAN, NECA, all of the private sector players. And for me, I like to see 2025, we're wrapping this up already. Where are we? Someone sent a direct question that I should ask you, that even looking at the textile space and other space, other of this, what is happening? What is happening?
Textile is a sad point for us, Years ago, you have the Aswani textile industry. Kano is dotted with textile factories everywhere. But we seem to miss the point in regulating the issue of importation. Because if you don't promote the local industry, what you will do is you open the space for importation, and you'll have exported your jobs, So businesses that should have been established, that have been growing in this environment, that will have created jobs, that will have paid tax, then you'll have substituted your growth for revenue, within the context of the import duties that you'll have collected. So I think a lot of conversation is also going on in the issue of textile. You can see I'm putting on a local material, a local ashofi, and the cry by the private sector for government to also institutionalize or if necessary, legislate the patronage of made in Nigerian products. So whatever we can build here, whatever we can produce here, we really don't have business importing them. It's for the good of the country, for the good of our nation, for the good of the average Nigerian, as it were. It's not really about the business, because when we say the most patronized made in Nigerian goods, something is all business reasons. It's just all businessmen want to make money. The truth of the matter is this: if we don't develop this economy and we focus too much on the issue of importation, we'll be exporting our jobs instead of creating jobs in this environment. We'll have misplaced our priority. We'll make gains in the short term, but in the long run, we'll have helped other economies to grow.
You know what, as you were answering that question, my mind went to the Nigeria First policy and all that government is doing. I think we really need to be deliberate.
Absolutely.
About this, because just like you said, we are trying to manufacture vehicles here, for example. I see all of the efforts of the NADDC by the Mr. Joseph Osonipi. He's everywhere trying to push this narrative. But on the other side, some will make it easier for imported cars, used cars, to still come into.
It's a deliberate policy. We need to put our money where our mouth is, basically. I know the Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Odwole, currently uses a made in Nigerian Jeep.
I think she mentioned that.
The Minister for State. Industry, Prime Minister of Industry, he also uses made in Nigerian goods. So why can't the whole National Assembly, use made in Nigerian goods? Why can't all the agencies, ministries and departments use made in Nigerian goods? Why can't you come up with a policy that even in the ministry, allow local fabrics maybe 2 or 3 times a week? Why not legislate that, look, all public schools, their uniforms must be made from local fabrics? We are growing this economy by being deliberate with that. But you always have a counter argument that yes, a free economy, so those that want to import they should import. But allowing people to import creates a different dynamics, because while we are promoting the major Nigerian products, while we are promoting the Nigerian first economy, we must also create structures that will enable the local manufacturers to produce cheaply, so that they can be able to compete with the imported products.
Exactly.
Because if the imported fabric is selling for 1,000 naira per yard, and the local fabric is selling for 3,000 naira per yard,
3,000.
the base argument for a consumer will be, look, they are all clothes.
Yes.
So why will I pay 3,000?
More.
Why? I can just get this imported ones for 1,000. So beyond the Nigerian first policy, I think we've also advised that we need to take care of the basics, infrastructural development that will aid manufacturing in this country. We have to deal with it. We don't have options. Or else our cry, our advocacy for Nigerian first we end within the context of verbalization, as it were.
Moving forward now, DG, let's start to set an agenda for 2026 for the private sector and your expectations in your space. What are you thinking? Tell us what you're thinking, what you think should be done.
I think one of the things we want to emphasize is this. And I mentioned earlier, the rate of development of any country, to a significant level rests on the stability of the private sector, of the organized private sector.
I agree with you.
Politics play a lot of role in the context of setting governance, proper governance, providing infrastructure at that governance level. But we need to take a cursory look at the state of the private sector. The contradictions we have seen in time past, we need to frontally address it. It will shock you that, and we're not shy to say this, that you still have agencies of government, departments, whose activities is also contradicting the overall economic objectives of this administration. We've had cause to ask some agencies, look, this action you are coming up with, this policy that you are coming up with, how does it align, or which of the 8-point agenda does it speak to? Why the Taiwo Yedele Committee, Presidential Committee on Fiscal and Tax Reform, is also doing a yeoman's job, and kudos to that committee in setting the agenda for a proper tax system in the country. You see, I have some agencies, some ministries or department or agencies also trying to come up with levies, fees from the back, or some even going ahead to increase levies and fees in violation of the overall economic objective of this country. So those are the contradictions that we think the government can take care of, and we will not stop escalating all these issues to those agencies. And PEBEC have done a beautiful job this year in regulating the regulators, but more has to be done in the context of 2026, so that the gains that we have experienced in 2025, we don't lose it in 2026. But there must be a deliberate effort to support the private sector. I read a report this morning, or I listened to a news item this morning where they were discussing the youth unemployment rate, which is still very high. So which sector can create jobs for this? Is it the private sector? We say for every 10 jobs created in the world, the private sector creates 9. So if you want to address the issue of job creation, then you focus on the private sector. You support the private sector. The regulatory authorities must support the private sector. The legislators must support the private sector so that it can fulfill its role. We still find some level of attempt to stifle the private sector across board, thinking they are business owners, so the business owners are the devil within the context of this environment. But that is not the truth. To create jobs, we need the private sector. To boost productivity, we need the private sector. To raise tax revenue, we need the private sector. And also community development. It will shock you how many trillion is being spent by organized businesses in community development, 2 different CSR activities. Yeah. So a lot is being done, and we just need to, those in charge, or those that are playing supplementary roles to government, I think they should see the private sector in this context and provide whatever support is needed so that we can get out of this quagmire that we find ourselves. Kudos once again at the top level, at the presidency, at the ministries, some agencies that have seen the role of the private sector and are doing everything to promote the private sector. I can mention the Ministry of Interior. We partner with the Ministry of Interior to drive the reforms in that space. We are working assiduously with the Ministry of Labour and Employment. We are working with CBN. We are working with FRS. But the openness that some of these ministries, departments, and agencies have shown in engaging, they are not shy of engaging. And for us, the result is what we are currently seeing across board. So we urge that many of these agencies, departments, and MDAs will do more in engagement in 2026. No matter how vast or no matter the level of expertise of the head of that agency, the truth is you cannot know it all, and you cannot decide for the private sector, how to resolve the problem that the private sector has. So you must bring the private sector to the table through a public-private partnership to address all these issues that we have. And that's the direction I think we should go in 2026.
It's really a lot of work, but let's see how all of this plays out as we move into 2026. The tax laws too is there, and we've been having back and forth with the understanding of that. I hope that's not any worry for private sector players.
I think even up till, and once again, let me give kudos to the committee.
Honestly,
the kind of engagement they've had across the nook and cranny of this country, I'm not sure we've had any like that. Up to the 9th of December, about last week, we still had a virtual engagement with the committee where businesses and individuals still ask questions. It's a reality for us now. It's a reality we must face by January 1st, but we are quite sure that wherever those challenges will arise in the implementation, the committee is also willing to continue to engage.
I must thank you so much, Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Wish you a Merry Christmas. I think our next chat most likely will be in 2026.
Absolutely, by God's grace.
Wish you a Happy New Year in advance.
Thank you.
And congratulations again on your award.
Thank you very much.
All right, then it's time to review trading activities.